Hearing close in the forest you'll find a fabulous banquet, a fairy ball. If you close your eyes and you open your mind, the veil disappears and you'll see it all.
Hi my angels, it's Hailey Reese, and as I'm sure you can tell from our current background, today we are going to be diving into and discussing yet another unsolved missing persons case. For those of you who like to try to theorize about what could have happened to somebody and where they could be now, this case is going to be incredibly frustrating for you because there are very minimal leads and next to nothing to go off of. Today we're going to be talking about the disappearance of Brian Shaffer, a 27-year-old med student who was seen on surveillance walking into a bar but never seen walking out. I guess you could literally say Brian Shaffer disappeared without a trace. On April 1st, 2006, Brian Shaffer disappeared after a night of bar hopping in Columbus, Ohio. Now, unfortunately, 3 weeks prior to Brian's disappearance, he had lost his mother to cancer. Brian was described as good-looking, hardworking, highly intelligent, and he was said to love his girlfriend, Alexis Wagner, tremendously. So on March 31st, 2006, spring break had begun, and Brian had plans to meet with his father, Randy Shaffer, earlier in the night for a steak dinner, and later in the night he was to meet up with his friend, William Clint Florence, at the Ugly Tuna Saloona in Columbus, Ohio. Now everything went as planned. Brian went and met with his father, Randy, and Randy actually notably said that he had thought going out on this night was a bad idea because Brian had stayed up super late for all of his testing and examining leading up to spring break, and he appeared to be really exhausted. But Randy Shaffer actually never told his son that he thought these things or felt this way, and Brian headed out and met up with his friend William at the Ugly Tuna, where the two of them proceeded to bar hop. Now, William claims that at each bar they stopped in, the two of them took a shot of hard liquor, so it was pretty safe to say that the two of them were extremely intoxicated as they had went to several bars throughout the night and had taken a shot of hard liquor at each one of them. Now, shortly after midnight, both Brian and William met up with a friend of William's by the name of Meredith Reed. And Meredith Reed actually drove the three of them back to the Ugly Tuna, which is where Brian and William had began their night of adventures, and she had planned to join them for their final round. Now, while they were within the bar, William and Meredith actually lost Brian, which I know as somebody who goes out occasionally. I very rarely go out, but I have. And when you go out, it is very easy to lose your friends within a bar. They can get talking to somebody, they can wander off. I've never permanently lost one of my friends in a bar, but it is very normal to be like, oh, where'd so-and-so go? And you like walk around and have to find them and they're talking to someone else, that type of a thing. So originally, William and Meredith didn't think anything of it, and they just assumed that he had wandered off. So they began calling his phone continuously, and Brian was not answering his cell phone at all. Now at 2 a.m. when the Ugly Tuna was finally closing, William and Meredith actually headed out of the bar and they proceeded to wait for Brian, assuming that he had been within this bar and would be coming out to see them. Now when they realized that Brian was not amongst all of the people leaving the bar, they assumed that he had perhaps actually just went to his apartment and not told them, as he was extremely intoxicated. And sometimes when people are intoxicated, the decisions they make are based solely on themselves, not necessarily everybody around them. So they just assumed that he had went home without letting them know, and they left. So this all occurred on a Friday night. March 31st was a Friday night, and all weekend, both Alexis and Randy, both Brian's girlfriend and father, were calling him continuously with no response. They got nothing back from him, not a single text message, not an answered phone call, nothing. Now on the Monday, Brian and his girlfriend Alexis had a trip planned to Miami for quite some time, and it was actually said that Brian was set to propose to his girlfriend Alexis on this trip to Miami. However, on Monday morning, Brian missed his flight to Miami, and that was when it was reported to the Columbus police that he was a missing person. Now, police immediately turned to the security footage on the night of Brian's disappearance. The area that they had went out in had a very high crime rate. So all businesses, bars, and everything in that area had active active and functioning security footage. And what I mean by this is sometimes you will see a security camera outside of a bar or outside of, you know, a store, and they may not work all of the time, but in this area, all security footage was continuously functioning because it had such a high crime rate. So the police immediately turned to the mass amount of security footage that was captured on the night of Brian's disappearance. So police noted that at 1:15 a.m., Brian, William, and Meredith entered back into the Ugly Tuna. At 1:55 a.m., Brian was seen on the security footage outside of the Ugly Tuna, talking briefly with two women where he proceeded to say his goodbyes, and it appeared he re-entered the bar. So take note that this was 5 minutes prior to the bar's closing. Now, shortly after this, the bar closed, and that was the final surveillance footage showing Brian Shaffer ever. That was the last time that Brian Shaffer was ever seen. Investigators immediately began to theorize about how it would be possible for Brian to be seen re-entering a bar on security footage and never be seen leaving the bar. Some began to think that perhaps he had went into the bar and changed his clothes, or maybe put a hat on, and when he exited, he wasn't seen or located on the security camera because he was wearing something completely different. This theory to me seems unlikely for a couple of different reasons, but it was one of the main theories because it just doesn't make sense how every other person who entered the Ugly Tuna on the night of Brian's disappearance was seen exiting on surveillance, but Brian never was. The authorities even went ahead and checked the surrounding area's security footage, some of the different areas or bars nearby whose cameras pointed in the direction of the Ugly Tuna. They checked all of those to see if perhaps they had caught Brian exiting the building, but none of them ever did. There was not a single trace of Brian Shaffer on any security footage leaving the bar after he re-entered at 1:55 a.m. Police began searching with dogs in the streets, dumpsters, and even the sewer systems, all without any luck of finding even the slightest clue as to where Brian Shaffer went. The police went ahead and checked Brian's apartment 6 blocks from the Ugly Tuna, where they found his car still parked out front and nothing within his apartment was amiss. It was literally as though he had disappeared without a single trace. So those who had seen Brian on the night of his disappearance were asked to take a lie detector test, and both Meredith Reed and Brian's dad, Randy Shaffer, passed, as did everybody else who actually took the lie detector test. However, William declined taking a lie detector test. He was completely uncooperative with the idea and refused to take a lie detector test. Now, something that I found really strange, but also interesting in this case, is that Brian's girlfriend, Alexis, would call his phone every single night before bed just to hear his voicemail. She said it was very calming to her. And each and every time it would go straight to voicemail, except one night in September, it rang 3 times. Now, Brian's cell phone carrier says that this could have been a computer glitch, that it might not have meant anything, and Brian's phone did not have GPS tracking enabled, so they were unable to locate the phone's location. However, a ping was detected from Brian's cell phone 14 miles northwest of Columbus. And that is basically where this case runs dry. There is no further evidence. Brian Shaffer has never been found. They've never found a body. They've never found a motive. They've never found out how he could have left this particular bar without being noticed. Now, I wanted to discuss a couple of different theories surrounding this case, and then I want to talk to you guys about why this case is so incredibly frustrating to me. So one of the very first theories was that Brian had perhaps left amongst his own will. Now, this kind of coincides with the theory that he had went inside of the Ugly Tuna and changed into something different and left. That perhaps his way of coping with his mother's passing was to go off the maps and disappear. But I mean, that doesn't really make any sort of sense to me because he was planning, or so it was said, to propose to his girlfriend. His father had just lost his wife 3 weeks prior. They'd went to a nice dinner. They'd had a night of partying. I just don't see it as a situation to decide to run away. if he wanted to run away, he didn't need to hide from security footage and do it in such a strange manner, especially while under the influence and completely intoxicated. But that's just my opinion, and this could very well be a theory. I just don't know if it necessarily makes sense. Other people believe that Brian's friend William has much more involvement than he lets on, even if it's just that Brian did run away, so to speak, and William knows of his location or where he is. People just found it very, very strange that William refused to take a lie detector test when Meredith, who was with William and Brian, took one and passed, and everybody else who took a lie detector test passed. Now, both Brian's girlfriend and brother believe that William has more involvement than he plays to know, but there's nothing else suspicious surrounding William other than the fact that he didn't take a lie detector test, and there's no motive, and there's nothing caught on security footage that would lead anybody to believe that William had any involvement in the disappearance of Brian Shaffer. Now, the most popular theory was that Brian fell victim to the serial killer by the name of the Smiley Face Killer. From the 1990s to the late 2000s, there were reports of 45 college-aged males who were reportedly found dead by drowning. Their dead bodies were found in water across 11 states, often after leaving parties or bars where they had been drinking. The men, according to former detectives, were described as fit profile, popular, athletic, good students, and most were white. All men were found in incidences of drowning, but nearby was always a graffitied smiley face. Therefore, these detectives had actually pieced together a theory that it was a smiley face serial killer who would target men after a night of drinking and stage it as though they had been, or as though they had drowned, leaving behind his smiley face stamp. However, under this theory, Brian would be the only victim of the serial killer whose body had never been found, and Columbus police rejected any correlation or connection between Brian Shaffer's case and the alleged serial killer. One thing though that kind of led people to believe that it could still be a case of this serial killer is that a psychic had told Randy Shaffer, Brian's dad, that Brian's body was within a body of water near a bridged pier. And the final theory that I want to discuss is the fact that some people believe Brian Shaffer never left that bar. Some people believe that Brian Shaffer went into that bar and was either killed or kidnapped or something of those sorts, and his body was disposed in such a manner that even after the fact, surveillance never caught it. I mean, the only evidence to really support this is the fact that he is seen re-entering the bar and never ever seen leaving it. So that could very well be a possibility, but all of these are just theories because, like I said, he literally disappeared without a trace. There is no evidence, there is no motive, there is nothing other than a surveillance video where you see Brian enter the bar and you see him never exit. That is basically anything and everything to do with the case of Brian Shaffer. I wanted to talk about this one because sometimes missing persons cases don't have any bit of the closure that we need. What I mean by this is there are some cases where people go missing and we can kind of assume or get an idea of what happened to them. And with the Brian Shaffer case, there is absolutely nothing we can gain from trying to figure out what happened to him other than theorize about what we think could have happened. There's such a lack of evidence and motive and just anything surrounding what could have happened to him that we literally have to completely theorize within our own minds what we think could have happened. And so that is what I am asking you guys to do right now. Please go ahead and drop a comment down below and let me know what you guys think could have happened to Brian Shaffer on that night. I personally have no idea, but I will be reading your guys' comments and maybe we'll try to discuss something that could have happened that none of us have even thought of before. If you guys enjoyed today's video, but you are not yet subscribed, but you do enjoy my videos, I would absolutely love it if you would go ahead and click the subscribe button. And please turn on your post notifications if you do enjoy my videos so you never miss one. If you did enjoy today's video, I say enjoy way too much, please give this video a big thumbs up because it makes my heart super, super happy and I really, really appreciate it. And you just saw my ring light. Remember, my loves, do all things with kindness. And until next time, I love you.